I was in Kentucky for 4 or 5 days and spent the night at my cousin's home. Of the grandchildren who were there, I was the youngest and ended up babysitting duty for the majority of the time. I stayed in their little trailer at the top of the little hill, along with a bunch of my other younger cousins. During the day, everyone would go to my granddad's and leave me there with the kids, and then come back home for a few hours to put their kids to bed before heading back out to do whatever. The last night I was there, I stayed up pretty late. The kids were in the bed, and I had a place to myself for a few hours before I had to go back home. I went out and sat on the porch, and I walked out to find this awful smell. The smell was very familiar to what I refer to as smelted metal. I started gagging and walked down the stairs of the trailer thinking I would get some fresh air off the porch. As I got down, I saw in the moonlight what looked to be one of my younger cousins, Aiden. He was just standing there, with his back to me, a good 50 feet away from the trailer. I yelled out to the little kid that he needed to go back inside, or his mother would have his hide. But he just kept standing there. I kept hollering and walked up to him, and as I got closer, I noticed he seemed kind of off. He was standing, but he had his knees bent in a weird angle, and his head was cocked to one side. I tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned around. Aiden had this crazy maniac smile on his face. He started to shake, and it took me a moment to realize that he was laughing, but no sound was coming out. I tried to pick him up and carry him inside, so I could look at him in some decent light and make sure that he was okay. But he must have backstabbed me. As I tried to get him, I snatched at him and caught him. And he just started to scream this really guttural voice I didn't think he could make. It was just too deep and gruff for a 5-year-old to make. While he was screaming, he was also flailing his arms and legs. He ended up making contact with my groin, and so I dropped him. He then ran off to the trailer. I sat there hunched over for a moment, getting some air before running after him. He was gone when I looked up, so I ran inside hoping he would be waiting there for me in the living room. He wasn't. But after some searching around, I found him passed out in the top bunk of his bed. I was so confused, but I wasn't going to wake him up. I decided to just let him sleep and let his mum know what had happened. When she came back home, I told her what had happened, and she woke up Aiden to ask why he was acting that way. Aiden had no idea what we were talking about, and we ended up sending him back to bed. His mum thought that I must have had a crazy vivid dream and made it all up, but the next morning while I was packing up my stuff to the trunk, I smelled that smell again, that smelted metal smell, and I swore I saw Aiden darting underneath the trailer. I was about to follow him to see what he was doing, when he walked out of the front door a split second later, with the rest of his family. I just told myself that I was imagining things, and I didn't say anything to my family. My wife asked me to go camping. I hate the idea, but she seems pretty excited. Sure, why not? We drive to a secluded bit of land by our grandparents' house, and we spend hours setting up the tent in the campsite. We get ready and go hiking. As we are hiking, however, it rained a little bit, and we got a bit wet. We double back and get back just in time before it gets dark. We made another fire, and the wife is getting a bit tired, kind of low energy. We eat dinner and talk for a while. Then we decide it's time to go to bed. We inflate our air mattresses and get our double sleeping bag out. We get in together and she's shivering. I asked her if she was okay. She said that she's fine. She keeps shivering and I don't feel so good about this. You said you were fine. I don't want to ruin our trip or anything, but I think we should go back. I feel her face and it's pretty hot. Well, it won't be any fun if you don't feel well tomorrow. I think it'd be better if we just leave. You might have a fever. She agreed and we headed back to our home. As we decided to get our things packed up, I put her in the car to wait as I finished putting the tent and other odds and ends back into the car. I turn the car on and place her inside. I turn the heat on quite high so she can get warm, and I go back into the tent and start to deflate the air mattress, when I hear the horn beeping from outside. I ran out over to my car and my wife said that there was someone around in our campsite. She said that they were crawling. She said that as soon as she saw them and she was sure that it was a person, she made sure to beep the horn to notify me. I can tell she's pretty upset about this. I didn't believe her at the time, considering the state that she was in. I told her to relax and rest up as I finished packing up. I gather everything outside of the tent and step back in to roll up the mattress. I hear her yell my name. It sounded like it came from the woods. Why is she outside of the car? I then hear a yelp, "Help, my leg is bleeding." I rush out and I glance over to my car, but she's still inside, asleep. A wave of fear washes over me, and I hear something yell again from the woods. This time, it doesn't sound anything like my wife.
Help me.
I begin to freak out, and instead of packing up the tent properly, I just roll it up as best as I can and shove it into the car. I left a few unimportant items behind considering I was in a rush, and I didn't want to meet whatever it was out in the woods. I started driving and we finally make it home. When my wife finally wakes up, I ask her, "What did you see out in those woods?" She gets really serious and looks very stern in her face. She said that it was very wide and thought it was a naked person crawling behind some trees. She then saw them standing up against the tree and began to beep the horn to get my attention. Then whatever it was got down on all fours again, took off crawling back into the woods. In a way, I'm kind of glad that my wife got sick, so that we would not be outside any longer with that thing. It was the last summer that we all had together. We being me and a small group of friends from high school. There was me, my boyfriend, and 4 of our mutual friends. So things don't get confusing, I'm going to have to name my boyfriend Lee and my 4 friends, Ali, Harris, Landon, and Kathy. It was originally me and my boyfriend's plan, just the 2 of us going up to the parents' summer house in a nice rural area. Our friends got wind of it and decided to join in, since it sounded like fun. It would also be one of the last times we would be able to meet together as a friend group. The summer home was very pretty. It was very rustic. It had these big open windows lining all the walls, so during the daytime, lights were not necessary. There were no electronics, but the entertainment wasn't an issue because there was this awesome lake not too far from the place. And of course, we also had each other. We made sure everyone had a few days free from work and whatnot, and then we took off and we packed up all of our big comfy pillows and blankets, as well as some stuff for s'mores and hot dogs. We took our good friend Harry's rig up. It was this clunker van and it had a lot of room in it, so that's why we took it. It had rained the day before and the dirt leading to the summer home was all muddy, so we decided to just leave the car and carry all our stuff up to the house. Once we got inside, we pretty much just dumped all of our stuff on the floor of the living room. We wanted to get down to the lake while the water was still warm. The sun was going to set soon and we wanted to have as much time in the lake as possible. Now, there weren't a lot of people there. It was just 2 old guys with their kids fishing in a boat. Everyone was in the water at one point, except from Harris and Landon, who were just chilling on the dock. We were all there just having fun, fighting over inflatable rafts and whatnot, when Landon yelled, "Hey, there's someone over there in the woods." I propped myself up on the raft and saw what appeared to be a half-naked guy standing in the woods a little ways away from us. I can't really remember his facial features, but I do remember his eyes. They were very dark and glittery, like they reminded me of a fox or something. From the top of my head, I remember he was very tan. He had black hair. He was obviously an aboriginal. Most of all though, I remember his eyes seemed to shine, kind of like those pictures when you see animals and see their eyes glow from the camera flash. I assumed he was a swimmer, maybe with the old guys who were already there early. I yelled at him and asked him if he wanted to join us, but he just stood there, stiffly. He did not move. It was almost like he didn't even notice us, if it wasn't for the fact that he was staring right at us. I remember Lee yelling at him, asking if he was okay, but he still didn't answer. Harris is a big guy, a big, irritable guy, and he shouted at the guy to stop standing in the woods like a pervert, but the guy still didn't react. He just stood there with only bay shorts on. Lee thought maybe he was on drugs or something. He got really uncomfortable and suggested that we would leave. I agreed fully. The guy was really creeping us all out. We all clambered out of the lake and wrapped ourselves up in these towels and headed back to the cabin. The trail back to the summer house was uphill and gave us a good advantage point over the guys. He was still standing down by the lake, still stiff and awkward looking, except for his head. His head was turned as far as it could be to the side, watching us. Landon is pretty skittish and he started to curse at us, telling us to go faster. Harris said that he probably was just retarded or something and that if he attacked, he could take him. We all went inside the summer house under the guise of wanting to organize the stuff that we just dumped on the floor. But I think we just didn't want to go outside again while that guy was still standing out there, poking around. We do all we can inside and it starts to get dark out. Ali volunteers to go outside to dig a fire pit, and Harris tags along, and Lee says that he's going out into the woods to get some dead branches and stuff, and that I would go with them. Kathy said that she would go looking for some kindling, but I think she was still kind of freaked out. Anyway, me and Lee were out in the woods. He was getting firewood and some sticks to roast the food on. I'm stuck carrying the wood, and he was the one cutting it. The mosquitoes were eating us alive, and all I hear is this buzzing. But the buzzing just keeps getting louder and louder until it feels like my skull is vibrating. I can't see and my teeth are chattering. Eventually it gets so bad that I drop the firewood and swat it around my head, but that does nothing. So I just put my hands over my ears, but it feels like my hands are shaking too. It's then that I notice that I lost sight of Lee. I shout out to him, and as soon as I shout leaves my lips, I'm overcome with this violent stench. I can't even begin to describe it. It was so rancid and foul. I put my hand over my nose. It took all my willpower to not hurl. I started to head back to the cabin when I catch something out of the corner of my eye. It's Lee. I feel really relieved to see him and start to walk towards him, about to make a joke about how he tried to ditch me. But he doesn't really react. He just stands there stiffly without any real emotion in his face. His face is slack, like he'd forgotten how to smile or make any emotion for that matter. His posture isn't relaxed like usual. He's very tense, like all the muscles had cramped inside of him. My smile dropped from my face and he lets out this wheezing, gasping noise. His shoulders convulse up and down, and it seems like he's trying to laugh, but only comes out as a strange mockery. I felt so terrified and turned on my heels, and it seemed all of my time on the track team finally paid off. I was running and jumping over the branches and the buzzing returned, joined by the frail wheezing noise. I burst out of the tree line and bumped directly into Kathy after what felt like an eternity. I remember she said, "Whoa, what happened?" But I was panting and shaking too much to answer. She brought me over to the campfire, which was started, and sat me next to Lee. He put his arms around my waist and started to pick the twigs out of my hair. "What happened?" he asked. I looked at him confused and angry. "What do you mean? You left me in the woods." He seems perplexed. He then explains that he saw me clear as day heading back towards the cabin, and he followed me back wondering what was going on. When he got back, he said he didn't see me anywhere, and the others didn't see me leave the woods. They were just going to look for me when I burst through the tree line after apparently running a marathon. "What happened anyway?" asked Landon. "Did you see a bear?" I wasn't sure if I was going crazy or not, but I was sure that I saw Lee. Now that I was back to relative safety, I began to doubt myself, but I told them anyway. I told them about the buzzing and how I thought I saw Lee. Ali said maybe I was just tired and Harris agreed, mumbling something mumbo-jumbo. We decided to try and relax and make some s'mores. It was pretty dark by this point, and the atmosphere seemed more light-hearted. We were all reminiscing about the old times and getting sticky from marshmallow goo. Landon took out his harmonica and started doing this funny old blue sky impression that he does. I was content and just laying there on Lee's lap, listening to everyone's banter, just kind of zoned out, when Landon stopped playing his harmonica. Everyone looked at him expectantly. No matter how tired everyone was, we could all depend on Landon to be goofy. But now he was just sitting still as a statue peering into the woods. Guys, I think there's a coyote or a fox or something in there. Ali is this country guy and is used to little creatures like this. He told Landon that it's probably just the smell from their food, and it would be easy to chase them off. Yeah, but this one looked big. Its eyes are high off the ground, I think. I feel myself tense up and look back into the woods. Lee snaps at Landon, telling Landon that he isn't funny, and that he is trying to scare me. I tell him that it's okay, but I ask Landon to stop. Landon looks at me and swears that he isn't kidding, without trace of his usual smart-ass smirk. He says maybe we should go inside in case it has rabies or something. We leave the fire and go inside the house, intending to go outside again after a while. There are a few couches in the living room that face out of the big window facing out toward our fire, so we all sit there to keep an eye out on it. Harris growls at Landon that he better not be messing around, but Landon swears up and down that he isn't. We sit around for a while and our feeling of lightheartedness goes away. The fire starts to burn low when we see it. Kathy let out this nervous squeak and gasp. Eyes! 2 glowing eyes can be seen in the woods. The lights of the fire make them burn bright. Slowly, a shadowy figure makes its way out and towards the campfire, and it steps into the light. We notice it's the Aboriginal man from before. He moves forward slowly, like a wolf circling its prey, and crouches down by the fire. On closer inspection, we notice that he has no shoes on, and what we thought were his beige shorts were actually some kind of skin-wrapped loincloth around his waist. I hear Harris mutter, "Are you serious?" And I feel Lee's sweaty hands slide into my own. Ali timidly says he could be mentally ill, to which Landon replied, "Holy hell." The man paws around our stuff and goes to where Landon was sitting. I see the man reach for something on the ground, and his movements seem robotic-like he doesn't know how to extend his arms properly. I see something glint in his hands, and my first thought was, oh my gosh, is that a knife? But then I hear a long high-pitched note of a harmonica. Landon makes a weird gulping noise, like he wants to laugh and cry at the same time. The man blows into the harmonica again, holding the same high-pitched note for about 20 seconds or so. He makes a few more circles around our campfire, his dark eyes still glowing. He stops for a moment and looks into the windows. He stands there for a good 5 seconds before heading back into the woods. Okay, what is this guy's deal? Landon asks. Ali repeats that he could have some mental illness, but is now met by silence. Kathy looks extra nervous and has her nails pulled up to her chin, and she's shivering. I ask her if she's okay, and she starts to rub her eyes, and her cheeks turn pink, like they always do right before she's about to cry. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it earlier. I saw that guy earlier when we were walking up the driveway, but I didn't mention it. I didn't know, I didn't know. She breaks off into tears and repeats her mantra of, I didn't know. Harris pats her awkwardly on the head and tells her that she doesn't need to apologise for not assuming every half-naked guy is a creep. She then shakes her head viciously and begins to ramble about some old Navajo legend and some weird beliefs. She tells us how she's scared and thinking of how her mother would tell her these stories of these unicloths. Ali told her to be quiet and that she was only scaring herself. Lee goes through his bag and gives her this bottle of water, and then he covers her with this feathery blanket and tells her that she was okay. The fire is nearly burnt out and we decide we won't be going out anymore that night. Harris and Lee go outside to grab our flashlights and the things we left out in a hurry to get indoors. We pull all our cushions off the couches, which apparently double as beds. I'm in one bed with Lee beside me, and Landon is on the other side with Ali and Kathy. The sleeping arrangements are a bit more cramped than we had intended, but we didn't want to separate. I guess I fell asleep at one point because a loud clap of thunder woke me up. It was raining pretty hard now, and the rain was coming down sideways like a thick sheet. "Hey, is anyone awake?" I whispered, but no reply. There was a flash of thunder, and I can make out all my friends' sleeping forms. Lee has his arm around me, and I pull over my blanket, over my shoulders, and snuggle closer to him. Another flash of lightning, and I see it. Those two green-yellow orbs lit up in the darkness, standing right at the huge ground-level window. The house goes dark again, but the light of those orbs are burnt into my retinas. And it seemed everywhere I looked for a couple of seconds, the orbs were there. Another flash of lightning, and I see the man walking across the side of the window. It goes dark again, then bright. He's now outside the window at my feet. I nudge Lee awake and tell him not to move, and that the man was circling the house, and that he shushes me and kisses my ear, and the lights flashes again. The man has made a full circle as it's at my left again. "I think he's trying to get a rise out of us," Lee whispers. I asked him what we think we should do. Stay still, and if he gets in, I have my buck knife under my pillow. Landon shifts beside us groggily and moans, "Keep it down, lovebirds, I'm trying to sleep." I tell Landon that he's an idiot and that the man is outside, and he groans. Landon and Lee have their eyes shut, I think. Mine are open to slits, and the room lights up once again. That's when I notice it. This guy is inside. I guess Landon didn't have his eyes shut because he screamed at the same time as I did. Lee sits up holding his buck knife. "Listen, we don't want any trouble. Just leave us alone. Don't do anything crazy." The man is moving slowly forwards, eyes glittering in the darkness. Lee stays still, unable to see in the darkness. The man opened and closed his mouth a couple of times, in a choking growl, saying, "Trouble, trouble." His voice doesn't sound right. It gives me this sick, sinking feeling inside. It sounds like a scratchy record, maybe a parrot or something. The room lights up again, and the man is nowhere to be seen. Harris and the others are sitting up, bewildered. Lee is on his feet, pulling at his shirt. "This guy is in here, I know it." He brandishes his knife around. "We need to leave." My eyes are starting to adjust, and I see the shape of Ali tilt her head. It's dark, and we can't see anything out there. And it's pouring like crazy. Harris is now on his feet, reaching around in the darkness for a flashlight. "I think he's the one that needs to leave," he growls, and makes his way to the kitchen, hatchet in hand. Lee follows closely behind, and noticing that they all took weapons, the rest of us follow. Kathy is sticking to me like glue. "This is what it wants," she mutters. "It's a game." We checked the house upstairs, every room, every closet. We didn't find anything. We all returned to the living room after that, trying to decide what to do. "It's going to be morning soon," Harris says. "We'll leave as soon as the sun comes out." I didn't want to stay there any longer, but blundering down the long muddy driveway in the darkness was not an attractive idea either. We all settled back in. I think we all got scattered sleep except from Lee, who sat up the whole night keeping watch. Every time I drifted off, I found myself jolting awake again. Eventually the sun rose, and outside was a bright and pink skyline that was so beautiful. We hurried and shoved our crap in our bags. My bladder felt like it was going to burst, and everyone else went outside. I asked Kathy to come to the side of the house with me so I could pee, because I was not going back in the house. She still looked a bit traumatized, her dark skin looking pale. She hugged her own shoulders. I squatted down to pee by the house, and told her not to look. She didn't reply, but I didn't expect her to. I finished and stood back up, and I told her to come with me. She stood still, arms crossed, looking at the ground. I stared towards the others, peering around the corner. Kathy was sitting with the others, sitting on the stairs. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach, and I turned around to see Kathy's doppelganger, her arms wrapped around her shoulders, shuddering. She lifted her upper lip in a weird sort of smile, and sighed heavily, mouth penning and closing. Her breath hit me, and I smelt it. It was a repugnant scent from before. I checked and she backed away slowly towards the tree line, staring into my eyes, not blinking. She choked out the words, "Come on," but halfway through saying that, her voice changed into what sounded like a fox, and she vanished off into the underbrush.